immune system. We call it lupus, which is a short form of a long word, systemic lupus erythematosus. The word lupus comes about because in the early days of this disease, people recognized that people who had this disease had some mark on their face, and the ancient people thought it looked like someone who had been scratched by a wolf. And so lupus is a Latin word meaning wolf. Okay, so a lot of analogy is ascribed to this disease. Some people call it wolf, some people call it a butterfly disease because of the characteristic butterfly rash they have. So it is a chronic autoimmune disease where the body attacks itself. We say it is a systemic autoimmune disease because it doesn't just attack only one organ. It can attack any organ in the body. So every part of the body can be attacked by the immune system. If I can quickly explain why this is important. So your immune system is designed by God to protect you from any foreign agent that comes in. But unfortunately for people who have autoimmune diseases, because of some particular thing that happens, the body is not able to recognize the parts of the body that belongs to itself. There are many reasons, scientific reasons for that. And so instead of protecting you as the body's soldiers, it sees a cell in the body and says, no, this is not part of me, and starts to attack it. That's interesting. And God has designed the immune system in such a way that once it thinks it's foreign, it will attack it until it's destroyed it. So once it attacks if it's attacking itself, it targets the eye, it will target it until it's destroyed. It targets the kidney, it will target it until it's destroyed. That's how devastating it is.
So it's through no fault of yours, no lifestyle change, no
Not
nothing.
at all. So we know that it's two components, that people have genetic predisposition and then an environmental trigger. Genetic, I need to explain that because people hear it and think it's something that they inherit. Your genes determine who you are. It determines whether you have a big nose, you have a small nose or whatever. And that same gene determines diseases that you have or what diseases it will protect you from, and so many other varied things. So unfortunately for people who have autoimmune diseases, they are dealt with this card of genes that makes their immune system hyperactive. On normal days, it will not do anything. It is sitting there quietly, and then it comes and is provoked by something in the environment. And that provocation can be so varied. For some people, it's stress. So many stories of people whose disease started because of some emotional, financial stress. They lost a loved one, then this is what is triggered. Sunlight, certain chemicals, certain drugs can trigger some of these diseases to come as well. So it's a combination of a genetic and an environmental trigger. We know women are more likely to get it, meaning that the hormone estrogen is more likely to trigger it as well. And so that is one of the things that we look at very closely as one of the determinants of the disease as well.
What symptoms should I be looking out for?
What symptoms? So we mentioned earlier that it's a multi-system autoimmune disease, meaning it can attack every organ. Generally, a lot of people will present with fever, unexplained fever. So a lot of patients go around being treated for malaria and typhoid several times. If something like that is happening to you, ask whether you should be screened for an autoimmune disease. Unexplained weight loss, sweating, fevers at night, and then joint pains. For patients with lupus, they may also get this characteristic rash that we talk about, the butterfly rash that shows over the cheeks. So that might be you being lucky, and then somebody might spot that. But most of the time, what happens is, depending on the organ that is affected, then you may have those additional symptoms manifesting. If you have a young person who presents with a stroke, you need to think about something else that might be going on. Kidney problems, they may come with swelling of the face, swelling of the feet, that might signify kidney disease. If it's a joint that is affected, there's stiffness in the joints very early morning, especially the fingers, they may swell up. You must think that something else is going on. So these symptoms, the general things that we talked about, the fever, weight loss, joint pains, rash, and then depending on the organ that is affected, you may have those additional symptoms. Shortness of breath if it's affecting the heart, coughing if it's affecting the lungs, the kidney, swelling of the feet, the brain. People come with confusion. I've had people who come because they were sleeping 24 hours a day, and somebody said, no, this is not normal. And then luckily for them, at least they have features that made the diagnosis a little easier.
If you're an advocate, how did you feel when you heard about it, when you were first diagnosed? What was going through your mind, and how did it affect you?
My journey to diagnosis was, I think for me, it was pretty shorter than for most of the stories that I've heard for other patients. But then I started presenting symptoms of edema, that's swelling of the feet and then swelling of the face. And the doctor initially diagnosed me of post-streptococcal glomerular nephritis.
Oh, that's a mouthful.
I know, because he had earlier treated me for a respiratory infection.
Okay.
And he thought that that was what was causing it. So he referred me to a specialist. And we started investigating to find out what had caused it. On my own, I started researching about nephrotic syndrome. I thought it was something I could deal with. But when the results came, and then I found out that it was lupus, it was quite emotional, because I was told that it was incurable. And for me, I thought I was too young to have my life disrupted like that. But the doctors reassured me that there are treatment methods to help me cope with that. How has lupus affected me, mind and body? Lupus itself, I think, affects the entire body, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually even. And for me, I think that the physical symptoms are easy to show. The numbness, the swelling of the feet, the rashes, it's easier to detect and see. But what we tend to forget is the mental health impact of lupus. Particularly for me, I did not have a good relationship with my journey. I numbed myself through it. I thought I needed to get rid of this to get back on track with my life. And I developed a bad relationship towards it. I eventually started blaming myself for it, because I researched and read about it, and then people write a lot of articles.
I know,
and then,
Google will tell you things you don't want to hear.
Yes. So I read about things like having COVID could trigger that, stress could trigger that. At the time, I think I was not sleeping well, because I'd been introduced to hustle culture, and I thought that I'm young, I'm energetic, I need to use all my energy now. So I thought to myself, if I had not done all these things, I wouldn't have gotten it. And I found myself explaining to people what lupus was, and then subtly saying that I was doing everything that made me susceptible to getting lupus. And that had subconsciously been ingrained in my mind. So until I finally got out of lupus and got into remission. And because my life was so lupus-centered, I had to cut out people and cut out things that I thought were giving me stress, instead of finding new ways to thrive within it and cope with it. After I got into remission the first time, I didn't know what to do, because now there's no lupus. And I remember Dr. Day referred me to a psychologist, and then as we started unpacking things, I realized that I'd blamed myself for lupus, and I'd been unfair to myself. So with regards to the mind, lupus has a lot of devastating effects, and depression can set in sometimes, yeah.
And how are you thriving? What would the journey been like after you were diagnosed and you realized that you don't have to blame yourself for it? How have you been thriving?
I'd say I use a lot of humor, community. I rely on community a lot, and then also stick to the doctor's plans. But it's been largely experimental, trying to figure out what your body accepts, what your body can handle, what your body cannot. It's been emotional, actually. Sorry.
Right. That's fine. That's fine. Take your time.
Okay. So it's been quite emotional. It's been quite an emotional journey. So as I mentioned, it affects every part of your body, both mentally, physically, spiritually, and all that. And for me, I use humor a lot. So an example is people find me taking a lot of drugs, and then they ask me why I'm taking drugs. And I tell them I'm a drug dealer. Of course, after that, I do explain to them what I'm dealing with and why. But leaning on humor, I think, makes it helps me to tone down the effects, because people will talk, people will ask you questions, you tend to gain a lot of weight, and then people would make comments. And I find that it's important to develop a mental model, a positive mental model that would help you interact with things in your environment. Experiment a lot under the doctor's guidance, of course, and then lean into community. Right. So we have the Rheumatology Initiative with people with like-minded challenges, and then people who have gone through it, and you can learn from such people as well. But most importantly, pay attention to your body, and then don't copy anything you see on the internet that is working for someone. Just run it by your doctors first. All right.
Dr. Fuad, let's talk about the common treatments that are available to people once they're diagnosed.
Okay. So remember we said the immune system is what is attacking itself. So based on the constellation of symptoms and tests, and once the diagnosis is made, one of the things we do is to try and look at what spectrum it fits into. So even though we say lupus, not everybody is the same. Some people come with kidney disease, like Nora. Some people will come with joint problems. Some people will come with skin problems. So we need to tailor the treatment according to the severity of the disease and what organ is affecting. So we have drugs that suppress the immune system. So it's supposed to bring it down, because what is happening is the immune system is overacting and targeting organ, which is different from when people hear, they say, oh, immune system, they think about HIV, which is opposite. The immune system is actually low in that case. Here it's overactive, so we need to calm it down. So we use steroids as one of the drugs that we use to bring it down. That's what gives the big cheeks, and then everybody says that, congratulations, that's what I would say, because they think you are pregnant and so on. So steroids are a mainstay of treatment, but it also causes harm, so we have to try and take it off as much as possible. Then what we also do is to use other drugs, we call them immunosuppressive drugs, which bring the immune system down even further, or targeted areas. These drugs are very potent drugs. Some of them we borrow from chemotherapy, that's cancer drugs, to try and target certain parts of the immune system and bring it down. And these drugs have profound side effects, so we have to be monitored and treated carefully, but it has to be targeted so that it can protect the organ. If the kidney is involved, for example, and we don't give steroids, we don't treat within 6 weeks, most patients will end up on chronic dialysis or have chronic kidney disease. In fact, I transitioned from a nephrologist to a rheumatologist because I didn't see why I was seeing so many young girls coming with kidney problems at the renal units. So I was like, oh, why? And I started reading about lupus. At that time, there was no rheumatologist and so on. But that's a story for another day. So it is important to target where the organ is affected. And we use those drugs, as well as the other things, diet, as Nora mentioned, psychological support. We need to look at lifestyle changes. There's no blame game here. You cannot determine what will trigger. So if you imagine that everybody in the family has a similar gene, why does somebody have lupus and the other one? It's not because of him. It's just a chance or luck that something comes to trigger it for that person. So we use that and then we determine it. If I can talk about the psychological aspect a little bit. When it comes to therapy, a lot of times we, as Noah said, focus on outside. When people have the butterfly rash, it's easy for people to see and hone in on that. But if you saw Nora, would you think she has any problem? No. She's a beautiful young girl, she's working. So that provides a lot of problems for them psychologically. First of all, this disease is unpredictable. One day you may have joint problem, the next day you may just suddenly collapse with a brain problem. So it provides a lot of anxiety when they understand this disease and what it can do. So they're living with anxiety. We look at the patient population we had at Kolebu, 60.4 of them have depression as part of their manifestation, and also the effects of the treatment. So if we do not focus on the other things that we should treat, apart from treating what the disease is doing, you end up with people who do not take medications, and then they'll come back with damage. You end up with people who cannot thrive or live with this disease. And we need to change that mindset about how we treat the body. That's not only the body, but there are other things as well that we need to treat to make sure that the patients will thrive. And so that's why we have locally our team for Lupus Awareness Month as the mind and body harmony, how we can still thrive with lupus. Because we have people who are doing well with lupus. They are still working, they are doing their PhDs and so on.
Right.
So it's a disease that can be life-threatening, but we can still treat and work and live with it.
I want to talk about what activities are in line for this month, but first I want to, if we don't know when it's going to attack us, what lifestyle changes are we making, or how do we make sure that, you know, we don't, get lupus?
So I always tell my patients that you think about lupus like a fire that is burning, right? To make sure that the fire doesn't burn out of control, you take your drugs, you do all the things you have to do to calm the fire down so that the chances of it sparking again is less. Okay. So yes, the fire is not completely gone forever because your immune system, you need it for other things. But you need to find ways to calm it to its barest minimum. So the treatments we've talked about, your diet and your lifestyle changes. You cannot completely use those to treat certain types of lupus. If you have kidney disease, you can't say, I'm using only diet. But diet is important. We know certain foods are anti-inflammatory that can help to bring inflammation down. Your nuts and your seeds, your fruits and your vegetables, those are helpful things. Your omega-3s, your vitamin Ds and your probiotics are helpful. So we encourage you to take that. Stress, it doesn't like stress. So you want to reduce it as much as possible. The hustle culture has to come down somewhere, somehow.
Wow.
So you want to sleep well, reduce your stress if you can. So those are also some ways in which you can reduce the probability of that fire coming back or out of control. So it doesn't go away, but you can keep it in check.
Does it affect fertility?
So lupus by itself doesn't affect fertility, okay? But if it is active, think about it as the body's protective mechanism, that if you are very sick, it doesn't want some additional problem for you to now add on to it. So usually when people have active disease, their hormones go out of control, their periods stop and so on. But once they are better, everything comes back to normal. Fertility itself is not affected. But when you get pregnant, you said pregnancy has to be planned when you have lupus. If you plan it properly, you are in remission. When Nora mentioned remission is the state where that fire is calmed down. It's not gone, but it's not causing active disease, and it can be on medication or without medication. Okay. So you're in remission, we are sure that things are fine, then you plan your pregnancy with your doctor and your gynecologist. Then your chances of success is like anybody else who has one. But if you are active, then obviously there will be more complications. Pregnancy comes with hormone changes, and this disease is driven by the hormones, as you mentioned earlier. And so yes, then pregnancy may cause more flare-ups, and then your chances of getting preeclampsia, hypertension, pregnancy, miscarriages are higher. But if it's planned, then your chances of pregnancy are almost the same as any other person.
So what activities are planned for the month? Who wants to take it?
So locally we represent the Rheumatology Initiative, which is a charity we established about 12 years ago to deal with autoimmune diseases. So May obviously is Lupus Awareness Month. Our team this year is, as I mentioned earlier, mind and body harmony, because we want to focus on how to make our patients have hope that in thriving with lupus. So we are highlighting stories of people who've had this condition, but they are thriving. That doesn't mean that you lose your job. It doesn't mean that you can't do or have the aspirations or the dreams that you have. So we reduces this depression stories and things that we have. We're looking at ways in which we can help people do that, highlighting stories, doing our educational posts on social media, and coming to you, obviously. Thank you for having us. And then we also have plans for our support groups and other people. We are teaching them how to use art as therapy. So we have a sip and paint session tomorrow. You're invited. We have a journaling session because we want to teach people. It's a way of therapy. Write your thoughts out, see how. So we are doing a journaling session as part of the things we are doing over the course of the month as well, to teach people how to deal with the mental aspects of the disease.
Nora, how important is a support system when you're a person living with lupus or you were diagnosed? How important is a support system?
Thank you, Eno. So lupus can feel very lonely. Having lupus can cause you to isolate yourself, because for me, an example is I can't go into the sun without sunscreen. And as we all know, sunscreen is very expensive. So if you're invited out for events, you cannot show up sometimes you are in pain and then you cannot even go for family events and you need to explain that I can't be there. So you tend to look as though you do not care enough. My friend puts it nicely as in inward looking, not selfish. You tend to be inward looking, and then you are sort of recluse from society, and that can be very lonely. Sorry.
That's fine.
You know, lupus people tend to have brain fog as well. So you can, forget the things you're talking about and all that. And that's part of some of the mental challenges that you have. And this is probably what is happening to me now. But then there's also new levels of, say, anxiety unlocked. You have a pain here and you think, is this lupus affecting me or not? So the societal challenges that it comes with. But for me, being part of a community with like symptoms is very comforting, because you go into a session and everybody's talking about brain fog as if it's normal, and then you feel heard, you feel seen. You learn things on how to deal with pain. You learn things on how to thrive with lupus and actually decenter lupus from your life. There are interesting ways to pursue your purpose and find creative ways of actually chasing your dreams without and living beyond lupus, actually. So you chase your dreams and you find creative ways, learn from people, and you have a lot of doctors on the Rheumatology Initiative support group as well. So they tend to give you advice on what to do and what not to do as well.
That's
Thank you.
amazing. Any final words, ladies?
So, well, we encourage you to learn more about lupus. You can check us on our social media, the Rheumatology Initiative, or TRI Ghana, TRI Ghana, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, to learn more about what we are doing. You can also join our fundraising drives to know how to. We support various organizations.
I'm sure donations are also welcome.
Exactly. So very, very much welcome, because running a support group, all of this needs income and so on. As well as we actually, because we know people are not diagnosed, because even doctors do not know much about the disease. So one of the tasks we do as Rheumatology Initiative is try to even educate health professionals about this disease. So a lot of advocacy, a lot of work is needed. So we encourage all to join us. And